Hey, emerging technology fans. On today's episode, I get a chance to speak with Kyle Burt from Catch Advisors. And he's also from the must-read newsletter, Faster with Kyle Burt. In this ever-changing world, and in which change is accelerating, Kyle and I discuss the security risks facing businesses today. And not only that, we talk about the hype cycle of cyber, which proves time and time again to be relevant with fast-moving new technologies. And I know you're going to love this episode. And if you haven't had a chance to subscribe to Kyle's newsletter yet, I highly recommend that you do so. Enjoy. Hello, tech friends, and thank you for tuning into Emerging Technologies in Business, where we take a deep dive into different technologies that are impacting businesses today and in the very near future. I'm your host, Brock Riney, and this podcast is brought to you by Kincannon XR. Let's talk tech. Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode. Today I'm joined by Kyle Burt. He's the founder of Catch Advisors and the must-read newsletter, Adapt Faster with Kyle Burt. Kyle, how the heck are you? Thanks for being on the show, man.
Hey, doing great, man. It's good to see you again, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, it really has been. So for everyone at home, Kyle and I actually both worked at AT&T more than a decade or 15 years ago at this point.
For me, it's been seven.
Oh, seven, okay.
Years. Yeah,
so I guess when we were working in the same place, it was probably closer to 10 at that point. Funny how long it's been.
It's
crazy.
Like 7, 10, like it's all time is relative, you know?
100%, right? So, Kyle, I wanted to just throw a couple questions at you, get your take on everything that's going on. Obviously, we talk emerging technologies. We've been really seeing in the business world, like everyone's heavily leaning into AI right now to automate mundane tasks and just improve the day-to-day operations that we're running. Have you seen any sort of like low-hanging fruit from companies that they've been taking advantage of when they're utilizing AI?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you can't even go on the internet right now without seeing everybody's ChatGPT post, or now Google Bard, or now there's two others. I'm drawing a blank on their names. They're all battling for each other right now. Obviously, ChatGPT is the one everybody knows. It's the one that went 100 million ARR faster than anybody else in the world ever did, right? Broke all the records there, and it's probably the one that people are playing with most. Right. So the low-hanging fruit, I mean, you don't need me to tell you it's the obvious things. It's for content creation, every business in the world needs to market. And how do you go to market? You write blogs, you write newsletters, you create podcasts, you do YouTube. And so for idea generation and for getting you started with a framework, ChatGPT is a terrible writer, right? But if you use the right prompts, you can generate some blocks of style. You still need to use your own voice, or figure out what the voice is of your brand, or whatever. If it's a company or if it's an individual brand, you got to figure that out for yourself. But using ChatGPT as a great starter is wonderful. I mean, that's like level 1 AI. That's like beginner level 1. That's the lowest hanging fruit. But beyond there, like what's happening is now ChatGPT is like on the surface. That's what you would use it for if you went there directly. But behind the scenes, that's being integrated into your phone system. It's being integrated into Dialpad. Dialpad is using ChatGPT in addition to their AI to summarize meetings. They're already using AI to do sentiment analysis, to be able to tell like this is a good call or a bad call. Now you can use ChatGPT behind the scenes to summarize that call, so you don't have to read the hour-long meeting or the hour-long call, right? And so as we go deeper and deeper into this, I'm integrating ChatGPT into my CRM. Why? Because now I can analyze data quicker. Who's sitting there doing pivot tables in Excel, trying to analyze data, or using one of these new tools like Monday or an Asana or Airtable and trying to analyze data, right? And so ChatGPT can now take that data, and you could say, hey, I want to see this data sideways. I want to see it broken down by vertical, by industry, by number of employees, by whatever variable you can throw at it, it will spit that data out to you. That's super powerful. So
100%.
We're going to see the entire financial models shifting by the way that they can use AI.
Yeah. So ChatGPT even came out for the iPhone for iOS yesterday. I know this is going to come out a little bit later, so this will be a little late to the party of announcing that, but I thought that was really interesting. And then yesterday I was playing around with ChatGPT, and I was able to, just mimic somebody's prompt to be able to make a clickable box inside of ChatGPT-4 where you could then insert a TXT or CSV file. And it was so interesting. So like you were mentioning, for data analytics or data visualization, complete game changer. The amount of data that can be compressed so quickly, it's just hugely, it's going to revolutionize the world, like you were saying. And I think the more things that it gets incorporated into, the more and more powerful it's going to get.
Oh,
It
for
is going to
sure.
get pretty crazy.
Yeah, like if you think about like maybe some basic coding blocks, if you're a developer, like get a head start. If you know a thing or two about what you're doing, you know what prompts to use, or you can learn. You get a head start there, and now you're left developing the more complex parts, the simple dev stuff. Let ChatGPT do that for you, and
Yeah.
that's what's happening. But on the flip side, what we're seeing is so generative AI, that data supposedly by OpenAI, it's stored for 30 days, supposedly, right? Data privacy is a thing that in the United States, at least, we think we care about, but then overall, the United States, our American citizens, our data is all over the place. It's all over the
Right.
world.
It
It's
really
actually
is.
not private at all. It's actually the most public data available. Like just type in your name in Google
Oh,
and you'll
yeah.
see everything that you don't want to see on there, right? So it's interesting what's happening in data privacy with respect to generative AI, because now it's also companies are concerned that our employees, what if they upload, I don't know, a spreadsheet that has PII in there, personal identifiable information, or sensitive information, whatever the case may be, and now that goes into a black hole that is ChatGPT, and who knows what happens next, right? Does that data get leaked on the internet at some point in time? Are we liable for that? So a lot of organizations are scared of this, and some of them have straight up, for now, just straight up blocked ChatGPT from a web application firewall level inside their organization or on their network. So it's kind of an interesting time.
Yeah, because it is the wild, wild west right now, right? I think until we move away from Web 2.0 and get into Web 3, where, we have those ability to own our information without it being publicly broadcasted through Google or MSN or any of the big four that own all of our information here in the United States. That's really when companies, I think, are going to pull back those steel curtains a little bit. But I think we need regulations, too, before companies are going to feel fully, I don't know, trusting, I guess is the right way to say it. Because imagine if someone wanted to be malicious for your company, how easy it would be to put all of the company's information and customer information directly into one of these AI bots instantaneously. I mean, it's just
And
an easy
even
way to get just beat up quickly.
yeah,
You know?
and I'm an optimist too. Like I think that most people are generally good, right? There's bad actors everywhere. There's insider threat in every organization. Sure, that does exist. It's a real thing. Needs to be talked about. But there's also just, hey, I installed this plugin on Chrome because it said something cool about ChatGPT. It's actually not owned by OpenAI, but looked like it was. There's 100 other iPhone apps that now they're going to be obsolete, hopefully, because of OpenAI releasing their app. But they've been basically extortion, just charging $3.99 a week to use ChatGPT inside of a frame that is an app on your phone. That is the exact same thing that you would go do on the web, right? And so, but there's all these malicious Chrome plugins, and you think about like Chrome is like the world's most popular browser, obviously, and everyone's using that. So that you download a Chrome browser as an employee of ABC Corp, and you're not trying to do any malicious intent. You're just trying to optimize your productivity. You're just trying to be more productive so you can actually help the company. And next thing you know, your data is being sucked out on the back end based on that plugin. Or a malicious event is happening, and next thing you know, there's ransomware or whatever else happens next.
It's so funny. When I went to go download ChatGPT yesterday from the iOS App Store, just like you were saying, it took me a couple minutes to actually find it. I had to go back to the original link that I found and click on that just to make sure I got to the right one.
Yeah,
there's so many fake ones.
I downloaded the wrong one at first. I mean, even I did.
And of course, they try to make the symbols look all the same too to try to trick you into it. I'm like, wait a minute, that looks like Airbnb. This isn't exactly right. Not exactly the same symbol there.
I went back immediately and deleted it. I run pretty minimal on my phone. I don't like to have like a lot of the free apps that are out there because I know that they're not free. Nothing's free, right? They're free because of what? They're trying to market to you. They're trying to get your data to do something with it, right? And we can't 100% eliminate that. I'm not like going to hide under a rock like Patrick Starr or anything like that. But there's things we can control, right? We can minimize as much as we can.
Yeah, that's true. Talk to me about the hype cycle of cyber.
Sure, yeah. So the hype cycle of cyber, this is not a term that I created. This is a Gartner related term. But the hype cycle is a pretty fascinating place. It's not just for cyber, but it's for all emerging technologies, right? And as we are on this show here. But the hype cycle, it's kind of like a squiggly line curve. So it goes up, it goes down, and then up around. So it goes up through, it starts off with an innovation trigger, right? So you think about like Web3, how that was probably a year and a half ago, where that was like, there was a trigger, something happened, right? And it's kind of, generative AI has gone through this hype cycle a lot quicker, but it starts off innovation trigger, and then it rises up to the peak of inflated expectations. So they got some funny names for this. So at the peak, that's where everyone's expectations are like, oh, Web3 is the future. AI is the best thing ever. The metaverse is here. But then what happens is it goes around the other side of the curve down to the trough of disillusionment before it starts to climb up again to the slope of enlightenment and reach the plateau of productivity. So if you think about things like email, right? Email's been around forever. Like email is way on the other end of the plateau of productivity. And you compare that to something like Web3, which Web3 right now is like rounding the peak of inflated expectations. And then you compare that to something like the metaverse, to see all the VR gear behind you. Metaverse is like definitely still climbing the innovation trigger, and it's kind of stalling right there. Right. So it's just an interesting report that is run by Gartner. That they do this multiple times per year, but it's something to keep your eye on as you're trying to adapt faster and try to keep up with everything that's happening. Right. So you keep your eye on some of these things, and we see where they end up. And usually, like for somebody like me or somebody who's actually in the field of cyber or out there actively selling it, you're not going to be involved in a lot of conversations during that innovation trigger. Like it's cool, you'll talk about it, but like nothing's really happening yet. Right. Even when you get to the peak there, the peak of disillusionment, I mean, it's still like overly hyped, right? The hype is the highest that it will be. It's like so high, but it's not actually practical yet for the majority, right? So we're not talking about like the early adopters, but for the majority, they're not jumping into Web3 today. Right. But eventually, after it goes through its cycle, when it completes the other side to the plateau of productivity, that's when everyone's using Web3. That's when you're kind of like, all right, you're too late to innovate on that, give or take. Yeah. But now it's like become just like email is today, right? More or less.
Because of normal expectation.
It's just a normal thing. Web3 becomes a part of your regular life then. It's just like, cool, what's next, you know?
Right, yeah, absolutely. So with all the different trends that you're going through, have you seen any sort of newer trends going on with emerging tech and businesses as of late? I mean, outside of AI, which we all know about.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously AI is all the rage right now, but what's happening now in the cyberspace, the cybersecurity component of that, like I said, is we're waiting to see regulations on AI. We're also looking to see how we can protect our businesses from DLP, data loss prevention. So a lot of the things that we're doing now, I would say they're past the trough of yeah, and so they're rounding up to the slope of enlightenment right now. Things like CASB, like Cloud Access Secure Broker, Zero Trust Network Access. Like these are things that we're actively working on now over the next several years. So I don't like to stay in the innovation trigger, that first climb up to the peak, because that's an area that it's cool to look at sometimes and cool to talk about, but it's not practical. What's practical right now is a lot of people are ditching their VPNs for something that's far more secure, far more practical, it's faster. They're adopting a zero trust model. And so that's what we're probably going to be doing a lot of over the next 3 to 4 years, is zero trust.
So I would assume a pretty easy answer to my next question, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, how much would you rate the importance of companies to go into these zero trust type of security measures, and why?
Yeah, so I'd probably rephrase that. I would say, depending on the size of your company, your number one priority is customers and revenue, right? Your number two priority after that is got to be security. Like it should be. So if we were rating that out of 10, I'd say security is 9. Because if a security event does happen, all those customers that you have, they're gone maybe, potentially, right? There's a lot of implications there with reputational damage. There's sometimes customers don't come back, you know?
Right.
Like
And sometimes
look what
businesses
happened with
don't come back.
LastPass. Like LastPass is a great example.
Yeah.
So LastPass had a breach last August. They had another one this December. They're part of the GoTo family of companies, but GoTo is basically pushing them off to the side right now.
Wow.
So basically, I think they may be selling the assets off, or they're planning something with LastPass. LastPass is essentially, they might go bye-bye, you know?
That's the crazy thing about security issues like that. So not only do customers not come back, sometimes the business doesn't come back. I know I've read statistics before that like small to medium-sized businesses, the vast majority don't last 6 months after having a major security breach. And
yeah, it's
the
tough.
things that you got to think of there is that's why it really becomes important to customers. And obviously, we've had new things that have come out, edge computing, edge devices, to where there's much less latency, much less chance for someone to actually hack your system. But if someone does get in and they can hold you hostage and just completely obliterate companies from the inside for one mistake. That's the crazy part about security flaws. And
Exactly.
I read somewhere that there's more GDP spent on security than anything else in the entire world, including drugs, which I thought was kind of surprising.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is surprising, but then it's also, when you're in the trenches and seeing it, a lot of companies they see security, it's a layered approach. They have this analogy I'm not a big fan of it, but they call it the Swiss cheese analogy. So if you think of like a security product, it's a piece of Swiss cheese. It has holes in it, so it's not perfect, but you layer that on, and then you just layer on more pieces of Swiss cheese until you eventually cover most of the holes. You cover most of the gaps. But the problem with that is the overspend. They're overspending on all these security products, and then they're still getting hacked. Why is that? Because it's not necessarily the technology that we need, it's the people that we need and the process. So you can have all the best tools, all the best tech on the planet, but if you don't have the right policy set up, if you didn't even turn it on, like a lot of times, like you'll have this tech sitting there on the shelf collecting dust. Yeah, it's there. If we had to answer a DPA, a data protection addendum, or a cyber insurance request to say, hey, are you guys able to protect your data? Yes, we are able to. We didn't turn it on though, but we can answer yes on those documents because we are able to. We just didn't turn it on. So we can be NIST compliant or compliant with CISA, whatever framework we're following. We can be in compliance with these things because sometimes it's a gray area where we can say, yes, we are able to, versus, yeah, we actually are completely safe there, right? There's very key differences there.
No doubt about it. And I think you're right. It's not just the type of technology that you have. It's the morale that you have around it, if the internal workers understand why it's so important too. Because I've even heard of these security companies who go around and try to basically infiltrate into companies, and they'll leave flash drives and break rooms and all sorts of crazy stuff to try to catch people out. And obviously we do the fake Amazon order and everything else like that. But it's just funny to me how different techniques go through. But I think you're right. It's not just the technology. It's got to be the people and what the company really puts behind it to ensure that those security measures are followed at all time.
Yeah, for sure. And what's interestingly enough, the companies that are spending the most money on cyber, they're probably spending the most money on cyber insurance as well. And by spending money on cyber insurance, they've actually opened themselves up to attacks, to being targeted.
That makes sense.
So it's
They're on
kind
the
of
list, right?
It's kind of a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
They're more likely to be attacked by ransomware because why?
There's
Our data is out there. So if you have cyber insurance, there's a list somewhere your company's on that you guys have cyber insurance. Now you're on that list of like, hey, you spend money on cyber, maybe you have enough money to pay a ransom too.
Well, yeah, it's like anybody else. Like if a thief is going to go after a bank account, that's the reason why they always do like that 1 or 9 cent transaction to see if you have any money in the account. If we know you have insurance, you're easy money. We're coming straight after you. At least if I'm a crook, that would be the way I would be thinking about it too, right? I want the guaranteed win. I'm not going to spin my wheels for nothing over here.
Yeah, oh, for sure, no doubt.
So let's change topics. Let's go down the Apple route, okay? I know we're both Apple guys, or at least have been around Apple for a very, very, very long time.
Oh, yeah.
And, of course, being in the XR world myself, with having obviously all the headsets over here, I'm super pumped for WWDC 2023, and I know this episode will come out afterwards, but I'm giving you the opportunity to predict the future there, Kyle. Do you think
Sure.
we're going to see an AR VR headset here June 6th, or do you think it's all hype right now and we're just getting a new MacBook Pro?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I will say that I know a lot of cyber guys that wish they still had a BlackBerry because it was easier
Right?
to secure.
It's the only
But
secure one, right?
they will default to Apple because Android, as we all know, is a complete
Way
mess.
too
From,
open.
from a security standpoint, right? If you love it as a consumer, great. But from a security standpoint, Android's a complete mess. It's all over the place. So I would never bet against Apple just because of their track record and because of what they've done to the world already with the iPhone and everything that came after that, right? So if anybody was going to accelerate the metaverse, right, to make that a reality, or at least probably in stages make more of the augmented, the AR be more prevalent, then I would see that being Apple, right?
Right.
So are they going to release a VR headset? Seems likely. Seems likely that they're going to release one in June. Seems very likely, right? Time will tell. But I will say that if Apple does release it, then they will definitely accelerate the adoption of VR. But I still see a lot of challenges for VR in the metaverse, right? I still see a lot of challenges. Like I, for one, get motion sickness. I know a lot of people that do. So, and I got my VR headset back here behind me, the Oculus. But, you know, if it's, for me, like if I have the headset on and I'm not moving, like if I'm like in the VR space, like I'm not like on a roller coaster or flying through space, like those things I can't do at all. But if I'm just standing there in the VR space and I control my movement, I'm good.
Yeah.
But if the screen is moving forward and I'm not moving forward, that's bad, real bad. I don't like it. And I know a lot of people are the same way.
Yeah, and I wonder if Apple will find a way around that, honestly. So I can't help myself. I dig into it entirely. It's probably more than I should, right? So everything that I've been hearing is speculation and rumor is that there's like a one-touch button to be able to go from VR to AR, which then could potentially find a different way to deliver the light to your eyes, which is more than likely what's giving you that motion sickness whenever you're dealing with it. So that's going to be really interesting to see if they do come out with something. My biggest worry is that the bill of materials is already over $1,500 from what we're averaging, and you can assume that we're going to double that for what the actual cost is to a human participant who's going to buy one. So I'm assuming a $3,000 headset, which, to be fair, if you're looking at the competition that's out there, the Microsoft HoloLens is $3,000. Magic Leap 2 is in that range too. So it's not like they're way off the edge, but just like you said, I think that's where the adoption rates are going to drastically change because everyone's more willing to do so. Just like we saw with smartphones, when we went away from BlackBerry, when BlackBerry was the quintessential smartphone, and then we started having different Windows phones, I guess it was the Blackjack 2, things like that would come out, the terrible Trio phones that I just still, in my nightmares, I'm still trying to line them up to get contacts to transfer from one to another, my friend. But once we got past all those, Apple came out, and we saw even smartphone adoption was huge at that point. MP3 adoption has been huge ever since, the Shuffle or iPod Touch came out. And they do these things every so often where they'll lend their hand and they'll just drastically change something. I'm also wondering, at least in my head, I don't know necessarily for this year, but I've heard there's been talks about an Apple vehicle as well. And just looking at the other EV vehicles that are out there, outside of Tesla, no one has done a really great job of making your car an experience and a way to be additive to your life rather than just being a car, right? So it wouldn't surprise me either if we get the VR headset this year and then following next year, we could be talking a true Apple vehicle. That would be a part of our life cycle. Wouldn't you love for all of your iOS stuff to be completely connected to your car? No more of anything else that's getting in the way to stop that stuff from happening.
I mean, trust me, man. I'm an Apple fanboy, like the best of them. Even their products that I think are completely overpriced and potentially failed.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, but I think they still struggle to get some of the basics right, because Amazon owns the home, and
That's
Apple
true.
doesn't.
That is very true.
And that's like the one thing, right? Siri's great, but then Siri doesn't connect to all my devices the way Amazon does. And even though I'm deep in security, like you can't discount the fact that removing friction from your life, like being able to turn the office lights on when I walk in here automatically through Alexa, or I'm careful not to say her name right now, or just being able to automate your home. I mean, that's like a basic miss that I think Apple needs to come back and focus on. It's great that they're trying to innovate on these other angles, but man, I wish they would just come back and fix the home, because their HomePod thing, in my opinion, is a big failure. And
Yeah.
it's probably not even an opinion. You could probably look at the stats. I don't have that data, but I'm sure it's not nearly as good as Amazon.
That's why I really doubt like their AR or VR headset would fail. They very rarely throw something out there that isn't revolutionary or doesn't work. But I understand how their first iteration of the home automation side just didn't hit the mark. But
Yeah.
they're not the first people to be hitting the VR AR market, whereas they were kind of some of the forebearers to bring automation into homes along with Amazon at the time. Amazon just beat them in that game straight out.
Yep. Yeah, Apple does really well when they sit back and watch what's happening. All right,
Yep.
they like this is always classic. You'll attest to this too, and this still happens today. Like Samsung will come out with like, "Hey, we got 4 cameras now," and then Apple will sit on the sidelines and watch,
Yeah.
and then one day they'll add 4 cameras. They'll add a 4th camera.
Yep.
So
The way
that
I've always
happens.
said it is they like to let everybody else walk around and bang their knees in the dark until
Yep.
they learn the best path, right? And then they're like, oh yeah, we'll just turn on the lights. This will be a lot easier. But
Yep.
we watched all you idiots do this for a while.
Yep, for sure.
So for you have being an entrepreneur, are there any experiences that you would give to someone who's starting their business that maybe you just didn't know day one? Ways that you bruised your knees or ran into something in the dark, and something that you could help somebody else not have that as many hardships, just in case they ever wanted to hear from somebody who's been through it themselves.
For sure, yeah. I think anyone starting their own business, you have to get you have to get a lot. You have to get a lot of things right. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not entirely easy, but I would also make sure people are not too afraid to try, because if you can get these 2 things right, sales and marketing, if you can get those 2 things right, then you can step out into this world and be okay. You also have to kind of lower your expectations. LYS, as I say sometimes. Got to LYS a little bit, lower expectations. And from there, just things I would say to avoid falling in the trap of like these $997 coaching courses, or just sitting there like reading or learning. Not to discredit learning and reading. I mean, maybe there is value in that, but don't sit there and read through 100 books before you make a move.
Try
I mean,
anything.
how long is that going to take you? Or don't go through 20 courses, right? Maybe there is 1 or 2 that will help you get where you need to go. I would just say get out there and start doing stuff. Start doing it, try it and fail. When I first started my company, it was called Catch Solutions LLC when I very first started it. And it was actually a marketing company. So we started as a marketing company. I was actually still employed by AT&T. It was a side hustle. And my first client was my dad's business, and we did a social media management for him. So we were learning everything we could about Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram. We were learning, and turned out like that wasn't for me. I didn't like it. But what I gathered from that is I learned a lot about the dynamics of social media. I learned a lot about how to gain attention in some ways. Like, I'm not the best at it by any means, but I learned enough of how to do that so that I could pivot and then go after a different market and use that marketing skill that I had acquired to go out and make a noise and make a name for myself and carve a little piece of some clients acquisition online. And I've done that. So I've done client acquisition online, which it seems daunting if you've never done it. But then behind the scenes of what happens online, you have to hustle. You have to have like a sales mentality. You got to pick up the phone and call 1,000 people. You got to email 1,000 people. You got to knock on 1,000 doors until they tell you no.
Right.
And then when they tell you no, try again 3 months later.
Yep, with a different message, slightly
So-
more changed around.
Yeah, so I mean, I see a lot of people that maybe they're like, hey, I don't like sales. Well, maybe you shouldn't do this if you don't like sales, or find a better way to sell. Find a better way to sell, or find a way to market. So you can probably get away without one of those. If you're really good at marketing, you can get away without sales initially, maybe, or vice versa. If you're really good at sales, you can get away without marketing But I'd say it's getting tougher to do that. Like those worlds of sales and marketing, they're kind of combining, they're converging right now.
They really kind of are. I think that's why more people are going to be leveraging AI. But I love what you said there. Just get out there and go do it. Go get your knees bloody. Figure it out. I mean, the best way to know whether something's for you or not is to really try it. And one of the other things I really liked when I was reading through your newsletter and following you on LinkedIn is you recently shared your tech stack on LinkedIn, which I just think more people should do. It's just a really great way to collaborate. And some of those things I had never heard of, it just sparked an interest in my brain, and I went down the rabbit hole figuring out if they were for me or if I could use them. And I think more people should do that, and I plan to do that myself and encourage Kincannon XR to do it as well. Have there been any sort of innovative tech gadgets or applications that you've come across recently that just really impressed you?
So I'm looking at this one right now. It's called Calendar with a K.ai. And like they're positioning themselves as an AI sales agent, right?
Wow.
So that would be doing outbound, B2B outbound email campaigns for you, and also AI messages when they land on your website. So I booked a demo with them. I haven't really dug into that demo yet, but that's something that I'm looking at next. I'm looking at calendar.ai because I want to just, what I usually do is I usually carve aside time, at least maybe once a week right now, to invest in learning a new technology that might help my business. A couple of weeks back, I invested in a company called SmartSuite and moved my entire CRM operations over there from Monday.com. And I did that because I'm building a client portal and because SmartSuite is embedding ChatGPT inside of their application, which will allow me to analyze the data faster. So it's great that I can do all this stuff myself if I have 14 hours to do it, but I don't have 14 hours. I have 30 minutes. So what can I do in 30 minutes that I can't do in 14 hours, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm always looking for. Like, how can I optimize my time? Because for me, when you're an entrepreneur, you spend time working on the business, but then you spend time working in the business, and you got to balance both. Because you have to work in the business, but if you spend all your time working in the business, you'll never grow. You'll just be a slave to the company you created.
Right.
So if you spend all your time, can you spend more time working on the business, improving processes, making your marketing better, making your outreach efforts better, then I mean that's where you're going to grow.
Yeah, makes total sense. I think that's great advice for everybody too. Last question for you, Kyle. I know we could sit here and probably talk for hours. Honestly, man, it's so easy to just have an easy conversation with you. But is there been a piece of tech that we've seen in a TV show or a movie or something like that you'd really like to see come to fruition that maybe hasn't yet?
It's super easy for me. I've always been fond of skateboarding,
Okay.
and so the hoverboard from Back to the Future, not the stuff that they made up. I've seen they did that for real, but no, I want the actual hoverboard, that slim profile, that thing. I want that to be a hoverboard and be able to go outside and use it right now, like for sure.
I'm not kidding you. I kept a lie going with my best friend in 3rd grade for an entire year that I had one at the house. And he knew I was a liar. But for whatever reason, in 3rd grade, it was important to me to lie to him and tell him, like, no, I got one at the house. Don't worry about it. But yeah, I'd love to see that thing. Wouldn't it be the best?
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw there's like a replica. I was thinking about getting one and sticking it behind me on the wall here.
That'd be so cool. What a great idea.
That's a huge, I mean, those movies were like huge growing up for me. And yeah, I mean, that would be awesome, right?
No doubt.
So, I mean, I think there's a lot of cool tech that could come out that would help us be more productive, but we also got to live and relax and dig into some hobbies, you know?
No doubt, right? Dude, thanks for being on the show, Kyle. Really appreciate it. For everybody back at home, everyone listening today, is there a way for them to be able to follow you to where they can see your newsletter, of course, but just to reach out to you if they had questions in general to stay in contact with you?
Yeah, sure. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter at the same handle. It's Catch Kyle. So LinkedIn/Catch Kyle or Twitter @Catch Kyle. You can find me there. My newsletter's in your face once you get there, but it's called Adapt Faster. We're up to 1,005 people, so we've grown pretty fast.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to share my story and just be valuable. Changing it up this week and sharing some more Chat GPT prompts that I'm using. So I'm going to start to incorporate that once a week here.
I tell you what, I've been enjoying it. So I read every one of them. I highly recommend everybody at home just go subscribe. You'd be surprised how just interesting it is, and it's a nice quick breath away, and it makes you just think. I really enjoy it so far, so continue doing the fantastic work there, Kyle. I'm really enjoying it, man.
I appreciate that. My whole philosophy behind it was I was doing this because I wanted to do it, but I also want to make sure that there's a shred of value for someone else out there reading it. So it means the world that you've spent any time reading it at all. So I appreciate that.
Hey, yeah, of course. I do also want to take a quick second to thank our show sponsor, Kincannon XR. The future is XR. If you're working in XR, in the XR world, or you're looking to step into the future with XR, Kincannon XR is here to help bring your XR dreams into reality. So regardless, if you're developing your own XR application, or if you're looking for a helping hand to take an idea from that basic level to the next level, Kincannon's here to help you. Reach out to Kincannon XR by emailing them at inquiry@kincannonxr.com. And then, of course, you can also find our podcast on social media as well, at ETIB Podcast. And if you like this episode, click the like button, hit subscribe, make a comment, and tell Kyle what you like about his tech stack or what you liked about his most recent posting. And if you get a chance to do that, watch another one of these emerging technologies and business videos that's going to pop up above mine and Kyle's heads here on YouTube. That's going to do it for today. I've been your host, Brock Riney, and we're going to talk some more emerging tech next time. Bye, everybody.
To